Hello, Virgo. Ashamed, not slightly regretful, not oops, I made mistake. Ashamed, which is deeper emotion, which involves self-judgment, which includes recognition that their behavior violated their own values, which means they can see themselves clearly now, and seeing creates disgust or horror or profound disappointment in who they were. Shame is internal, is about how they see themselves, not just about what they did. Is I was person who did that, not just I did thing I shouldn't have. And shame is painful, is emotion people avoid, is feeling that creates hiding, is state that makes people withdraw, because being seen while feeling shame is unbearable. So when someone feels ashamed, genuinely ashamed, deeply ashamed, they're in suffering, are facing parts of themselves they don't want to see, are confronting behavior they can't justify or explain away or minimize anymore. And the extent of their disregard for you, that specific phrasing, reveals what they're ashamed about, not just single action, not isolated mistake, the extent, the pattern, the accumulation, the totality of how they treated you or failed to treat you. Disregard means they ignored you, dismissed you, treated you like you didn't matter, made choices as if your feelings, your needs, your worth were irrelevant to their decisions, acted like you were optional, expendable, forgettable. And extent means it wasn't once, was multiple times, was consistent pattern, was way they operated, not exception to how they operated. They're seeing that now, seeing the full picture, seeing how thoroughly they disregarded you, how deeply their treatment was wrong, how significant the damage they caused. And seeing creates shame, creates inability to look at themselves without recoiling, creates desperate wish they could undo, could go back, could be different person who made different choices. Here's what their shame actually looks like behaviorally. They're avoiding you if proximity still exists. Can't make eye contact, can't be in same space, can't face you because facing you means facing what they did to you, means seeing evidence of their disregard in your presence. That avoidance isn't indifference, is opposite of indifference, is intense discomfort that makes proximity unbearable. They're isolating generally, withdrawing from people, from social situations, from activities they used to engage in, because shame makes them feel unworthy of connection, makes them feel like they should be alone because they're a terrible person. Isolation is punishment they're inflicting on themselves, is withdrawing from goodness because they believe they don't deserve goodness after what they did. They're obsessing about what they did, replaying moments, analyzing choices, seeing your face, remembering your reactions, torturing themselves with details of how they behaved and how you responded. That obsessing is attempt to understand how they became person. Who disregarded you is looking for explanation that would make behavior make sense. But explanation doesn't exist. So obsessing just creates more shame. They're engaging in self-punishment, maybe through substances, maybe through overwork, maybe through denying themselves pleasure, maybe through staying in situations that hurt them, maybe through sabotaging good things in their life. Self-punishment is attempt to atone, to pay for what they did, to create suffering in themselves that matches suffering they caused you, as if their pain could balance your pain. But it doesn't. Their suffering doesn't undo yours, just creates more suffering in world without healing what they broke. They're confessing to others, telling friends, telling family, telling therapist, I was terrible to them. I treated them so badly. I can't believe I did that. I'm an awful person. Confession is attempt to externalize shame, to make it real by speaking it, to get validation, either validation that yes, they were terrible, or validation that they're not as terrible as they feel. Either way, confession reveals burden, reveals they're carrying weight of what they did and weight is crushing them. This reflection invites you to consider, how does knowing they're ashamed affect you emotionally? Does it create satisfaction, vindication that they finally see what they did, relief that you weren't crazy for feeling hurt? Does it create compassion, sadness that they're suffering even though they caused your suffering? Wish they could stop punishing themselves? Does it create anger, frustration that shame arrives now when you needed acknowledgement then? Resentment that they get to feel ashamed while you had to live with consequences of their disregard? Does it create nothing? Are you so past them that their shame is irrelevant to your healing or your life? All responses valid. Your feelings about their shame belong to you. Shame doesn't create obligation for you to respond in specific way. This reflection invites you to consider, what would you need from them if they expressed this shame to you directly? Specific apology, changed behavior, amends, space, nothing because you're done? Knowing what you'd need prepares you, helps you respond clearly if they reach out, instead of being caught off guard or responding from old wounds instead of current clarity. What their shame doesn't automatically mean crucial clarifications. Doesn't mean they've changed. Feeling ashamed and changing behavior are different things. Shame is emotion. Change is sustained action over time. They can feel terrible about what they did and still not have developed capacity to behave differently. Can recognize disregard and still lack skills or healing or growth necessary to actually treat people well. Shame is starting point, maybe, is awareness that precedes change, but isn't change itself? Doesn't mean they'll apologize. Some people feel intense shame and never communicate it, never reach out, never express it to person they harmed. Because shame creates hiding, creates belief they don't deserve to be heard, creates fear of your response, your anger, your rejection, your indifference. So they sit in shame silently, suffer alone, never give you acknowledgement you might want or need. Doesn't mean apology, if it comes, will be adequate. Feeling ashamed doesn't automatically create skill at apologizing. Doesn't guarantee they'll take full responsibility without justifying. Doesn't mean they'll understand what you actually need to hear. They might apologize badly, might say, I'm sorry you were hurt instead of I'm sorry I hurt you, might minimize, might still partially blame you, might express shame while still protecting themselves from full accountability. And inadequate apology sometimes hurts more than no apology, creates fresh disappointment, doesn't mean you owe forgiveness. Their shame is their experience. Your response is your choice. You can acknowledge their shame without forgiving behavior, can recognize their suffering without absolving them of responsibility. Forgiveness isn't required just because someone feels bad about what they did, isn't owed because they're punishing themselves, isn't automatic because they finally see truth. Forgiveness is separate decision based on your healing, your readiness, your assessment of whether forgiveness serves you. Doesn't mean relationship is salvageable. Even if they've changed, even if apology is genuine, even if they've done extensive work, some damage is too deep, some patterns too entrenched, some trust too broken. Shame and change and apology might create possibility, but possibility isn't guarantee. Relationship might still be dead even when they're a genuinely different person. And that's valid. You're allowed to say, I believe you've changed, but I'm still done. Too much happened. I can't go back. What you should do knowing they're ashamed. If you're still in contact, if they're in your life in some capacity, watch for behavioral evidence of shame, for avoidance, for discomfort in your presence, for overcompensation, for apologies that seem disproportionate to current interactions. Those behaviors confirm what this message is saying. Confirm shame is real, not just projected or imagined. And if you see evidence, decide whether you want to create opening for them to express it or whether you want to maintain current dynamic. Creating opening, I've noticed you seem uncomfortable around me. If there's something you want to say, I'm willing to listen. Maintaining dynamic, don't comment on their discomfort. Let them sit with shame without offering resolution. Their shame is theirs to manage. Both valid choices based on what serves you, not what serves them. If you're not in contact, if separation exists, decide whether their shame changes your willingness to engage if they reach out. Does knowing they're ashamed make you more open to hearing from them? Does it create curiosity about whether they've changed? Does it make potential apology more meaningful because you know it comes from genuine shame? Or does it change nothing? Are you still done regardless of what they feel? Is their shame irrelevant to your boundary? Either answer valid. Shame doesn't obligate reopening door, but can inform your response if door gets knocked on. If they do reach out with apology rooted in shame, receive it carefully, not cynically, carefully. Evaluate what they're saying, whether they're taking full responsibility, whether they're making excuses, whether apology is about your healing or about their relief from shame. Good apology names specific harms, takes full responsibility, doesn't justify, doesn't center themselves, demonstrates understanding of impact, offers amends if amends are possible, respects your right to not forgive. Bad apology vague, centers their feelings, includes but or I didn't mean, pressures forgiveness, rushes past accountability into wanting resolution. Evaluate carefully. Don't accept inadequate apology just because they tried. Standards matter, especially when harm was extensive. And regardless of whether they apologize, continue your healing independently of their shame. Your healing doesn't depend on them feeling bad, doesn't wait for their acknowledgement, doesn't require their suffering. Heal because you deserve healing, because moving forward serves you, because life beyond their disregard is waiting for you to claim it. Their shame is interesting, maybe, validating, possibly, but not necessary for your wholeness. What happens when someone's shame doesn't lead to change? They stay stuck in shame loop, feeling terrible, punishing themselves, but never actually doing work to become different person. Because shame without action is just suffering, is feeling bad without growth, is recognizing you were wrong without developing capacity to be right. And if they stay stuck, if shame doesn't catalyze change, their shame is useless, is waste of energy, benefits no one, not them, not you, not future people they'll interact with. You might feel frustrated if you witness this. Might think, if you feel so bad, why aren't you changing? Might be angry that they're wasting shame that could be transformative. That frustration is valid. But their stuckness isn't your responsibility to solve, isn't your job to motivate them toward change. Is there work to do or not do? Or they might harm themselves through shame spiral into depression, into substance abuse, into self destruction that's disproportionate to harm they caused. And if that happens, if their shame becomes self harm, you might feel concern, might feel guilty, might think I should forgive to ease their pain. But you're not responsible for managing their shame, not responsible for preventing their self destruction through forgiveness you don't feel, not obligated to heal them from shame they created through their own behavior. They need professional help, need therapy, need support system, need to learn healthy shame management, not your forgiveness as band-aid for shame wound. The power is yours. It always has been. Someone feels ashamed of their actions and the extent of their disregard for you. And when their shame becomes visible through behavior, through confession to others, through potential apology, your job is recognizing shame is not equal to automatic change, evaluating apology carefully if it comes, continuing your healing independently, deciding whether shame makes you more open to communication, and understanding that their suffering doesn't create debt you owe, doesn't require your forgiveness, and doesn't obligate your participation in their redemption. Take what resonates, softly release the rest, trust yourself. And listen, their shame might feel like victory, like justice, like finally they see what you saw. Finally, they understand what they did. Finally, they're experiencing consequences. And it is validation, is confirmation you weren't wrong about how badly they treated you, is evidence your pain was legitimate. But their shame, however intense, however real, doesn't undo your pain, doesn't repair damage, doesn't restore what was lost. Their shame is their experience. Your healing is yours. Don't wait for their shame to feel better. Don't need their suffering to validate your worth. Don't require their acknowledgement to move forward. You were worthy before they saw it. You're worthy whether they feel ashamed or not. You deserve healing whether they change or stay stuck. Their shame is just information. Interesting information, maybe. Validating information, possibly. But not necessary information. Not sufficient information. Not information that changes your fundamental worth or your right to peace. Heal anyway. Move forward anyway. Build life anyway. With or without their shame. With or without their apology. With or without their change. Your wholeness doesn't depend on their redemption.